I'm your host, Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted. Glad to be with you here for this November 18th, 2017, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. I want to thank everyone for their continued support. This show is basically brought to you by Chris, Bill, and Dan in New Hampshire. I do appreciate the continued support, and everyone in Eyal and Nelson. I appreciate the continued support of the big show. And if you'd like to be able to help out, you can just go to my sales page, which is linked on the website, marcstevens.net, because I do appreciate that. And I think with the last video, I got the lighting pretty good. Not much I can do with the live stream. That's still kind of rough, and for whatever reason, my webcam, everything comes out of sync. Even if I'm just recording with the webcam remotely here, it's not being streamed live. I understand that there might be an issue with the actual stream, but even if I just... not a big deal. But there's a cloud over November 18th, though, today. There's been a lot of deaths this year and last year, and you know, this one is wow, because you talk about somebody whose music is, you know, you talk about the light, you know, the soundtrack of your life, and somebody whose music was so influential on my playing and wanting to play and continue to play to this day, and then have them pass away, especially when it's so young. But today, Malcolm Young of AC/DC passed away from, I guess it was, I know he had not been playing with the band because of dementia. But saying here that I know he had lung cancer and he had surgery, and he also had an unspecified heart problem and wore a pacemaker. Yeah, he's only 64 years old, but my gosh, AC/DC was such a huge influence on me. Yeah, I know I wanted to play lead guitar because of his brother Angus, but yeah, still the riffs. He was a co-founder of AC/DC. He also was, you know, I believe he's got writing credits on pretty much every song. I mean, this is the guy that wrote a lot of the riffs that are so famous. And I intended on playing Ride On, which I thought was going to be appropriate, but I just can't seem to get the audio through the mixer. So we'll do without that. But I mean, so many great riffs that Malcolm Young and his brother Angus. I mean, I even had a '62 reissue SG that I bought over the lesser expensive at the time Les Paul, just pearl white Les Paul custom. And I wound up getting the SG because I was such a big fan of Angus Young, and of course, you know, Tony. I owe me a Black Sabbath, but I don't know. I'm probably one of, you know, thousands and thousands of guys who could say that they have spent a good part of their youth, yeah, the two youths, playing AC/DC songs in a garage. Always too loud. Always too loud. But wow, it's kind of a 64 years old. I mean, I know he led the typical rock star kind of life, so it's still dementia. I think in the last year or two, he had basically a complete loss of his short-term memory, which is terrible. So if you've ever known anybody, a friend or family that's ever gone through dementia, it's a terrible, terrible disease. I had a grandmother who died from complications, of course, from Alzheimer's. So terrible, terrible loss to the rock and roll world. But man, the number of the songs that this guy had written. Yeah, and people can make fun. Yeah, well, yeah, you know, it's just the 3 chords. But man, they made those 3 chords count. I don't think anybody would complain that Let There Be Rock is just 3 chords. So that kind of sucked to kind of wake up and get that news. So I don't mean to get things going there on such a crappy note, But if you're not familiar, if you're one of these younger people, which even still the younger, if you're not familiar with AC/DC, get yourself familiar, especially those first few albums, right up to Back in Black, which were, anyway, so rest in peace, right on, Malcolm Young. So anyway, we got that there Libertopia. Going to be in San Diego again, baby. It's going to be at Humphreys by the Bay. Beautiful, beautiful location. Great venue. It's going to be May 3rd through May 6th. I have been asked to speak again. I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to being there again. And we should be having a jam also with the guys, with Bill and the guys from the Living Tea Brewing Company right there on Wisconsin Avenue in Oceanside. And speaking of, hoping to get something set up there again real soon, and with a little more planning, get the drums out there and have a full jam, which would be a lot of fun. So definitely check out markstevens.net for updates on that. And I don't have many details. Maybe he will call the big show. But Jermaine, who's been on the big show before, has got another stay in a criminal prosecution up there in Alberta, eh? So is that like the easiest, cheesiest, not funny way of introducing something from Canada? It's just to say, eh? Is that really the best we've got today? But yeah, congratulations to him. Hope maybe he'll give us a call today or maybe into the Wednesday broadcast and give us some details on that. So that's some good news with a day like today where we just, started out so bad. But I had that on the list of things we needed to talk about here on the big show. Another thing I didn't realize, I don't want to spend much time on this, but because we're going to be up against a break any moment. But it's really ironic to have people who call themselves congressmen who force everyone in North America to pay them, that they are part of a criminal organization, one of the most violent the world has ever seen, where there is no limit to their so-called jurisdiction. It extends worldwide. Not every square inch of the earth is subject to their will, and they're going to be calling Trump a criminal. So, yeah, welcome back. We're listening to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and it's November 18th. We are live. He's been on the show before. Didn't realize that was him on hold. We need good news on a day like today, so I want to welcome back to the show Jermaine from Alberta. Welcome back.
Yes, hello, Mark.
Hey, let's see. Bump up your volume a little there. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I got great news this morning.
Yeah. I kind of gave it away a little bit.
That's all right, no problem. Yeah, I got a registered mailing from the Crown Prosecutor. I went and picked it up at Canada Post this morning. So I'll just read it out. It's very short. It says, Dear Mr. McKenzie, it said R versus McKenzie Germain, section blah, blah, blah of the Criminal Code of Canada. It was a 3-day trial scheduled from November 28th to 30th, 2017, 9 a.m. at courtroom 1005. Further to the above noted matter, please be advised that the Crown will be staying the above charges. Your attendance is no longer required on the scheduled court date. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact my office. Yours truly, Adam Drew, Crown Prosecutor. Now, isn't that sweet?
I think that is incredible. That is, while I'm looking something up, it's one thing that I don't think I've mentioned this before. But how often is it that you get to act as a McKenzie friend for somebody actually named McKenzie?
I don't know, Mark. I've never done it before.
Not that it's that big of a deal, but Well, I did it in a limited way last year.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Again, thanks a lot, everybody at No State Project, not only being there for the support, but of course for stepping out in that time of need and getting the habeas corpus for me and broadcasting me live right from the bin. That was something extraordinary. And so, yeah, just anybody out there who's listening and you're new to this, just keep at it, be persistent. And yeah, man, just keep coming here, keep doing the role playing. It definitely is. It works, man. Like right. I don't know what else to say.
Well, before we get into the details of this, we got to get this. Hopefully, it comes out.
Victory screech.
The details of what? Sorry.
Oh man, is that not coming out? Well, I did the victory screech. I guess you just weren't able to hear it, but they'll be able to hear that on the podcast. Well, I wanted to go through some of the details exactly what was going on, because a lot of people aren't going to know what you're going through, what kind of charges they are and what the backstory is here. So if you can just take a couple minutes and bring everyone up to speed.
Sure, yeah. So I've been, fighting these guys in court for about 2 years now. It was a traffic stop. They pulled me over. They did this twice to me. So they pulled me over twice. They fined me with failure to produce the credentials, license, registration, insurance. And there was also, I think, about 6 criminal charges that came with it. Obstructing a peace officer, failure to comply, obstruction of justice, possession of marijuana ×2, whole list goes on and on. And then, after that, of course, going through the courts and all the breaches and failure to appear, it was like, it's a long list. Like when Marc posted the letter that I got, you'll see all the docket numbers, the file numbers in the top right corner. It's like 13 goddamn charges right there. You'll see all the docket numbers. So it was no joke. They were trying to really bury me with this stuff. So the first time I had a trial, I was incarcerated. I did the trial right there in the blue jumpsuits and the chains. I actually beat that trial. How I did that was showing the bias, of course, with the Socratic method, just asking questions. I was able to show that the judge was clearly prosecuting from the bench and he was covering for the prosecuting attorney.
How so?
And so
we got plenty of time. This takes precedent. So just give us an example of what the judge was doing that was aiding the prosecution.
Yeah. So when you go in there and you ask the questions, does the prosecution have the burden of proof today? And they answer yes, of course. And then you say, well, does the prosecution have evidence that there's any jurisdiction or any right to impose upon me today? And when the judge then steps in and starts speaking for the prosecution and answering that question on behalf of the prosecution and saying, yes, we have jurisdiction because so-and-so and so-and-so, and then you respond again with a question saying, well, is that based on your opinion or is that based on the evidence that the prosecution is presenting today? And that immediately right there just shut the whole thing down. The justice, he basically had no choice but to recuse himself because it was very public. At that time, they didn't know who I was, and I think I caught them off guard. And so there was a lot of people in the courtroom, and he said, what did he say? Well, first they adjourned, came back in 15 minutes, and he said, in regards to this situation, I have to recuse myself. That's basically what he said, because he couldn't wiggle his way out of it. It was very clear that he was covering for the prosecution.
Right. I want to jump in here because thank goodness we got a lot of time here today. The beauty of that question, what caused, I believe, caused this judge to realize that he was in over his head or that he couldn't make this look good anymore. It was because the question you asked was a great leading question that we discuss on the show all the time, because this is a very common thing where the judge is trying to cover for the prosecution. And so when you ask him, is that because you said so or because the prosecution's evidence does on the issue of jurisdiction, that's a leading question, and you're only giving them the two options because it's the really only two options that are available. And knowing that either way he goes with that, he's in trouble because he's not going to say it's because he said so. I mean, that's a very rare occurrence, but they don't do that too often. So if they know if they turn around and they answer the question and are specific that it's based on the prosecution's evidence, well, evidence does not include court citations. And that's the best that the prosecution can offer, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. I do want to jump in and make a small correction. I believe the judge was covering the prosecution's burden of proof. However, your question, as you stated, we're typically asking the judge, and the judge is the one that's supposed to be answering whether the prosecution has the evidence or not. Now, what he did, or what they typically do, is cover for the prosecutor, but the prosecutor doesn't necessarily have to say anything at that point unless the judge turns to him, because the judge, let's say, isn't aware. But if you're asking if the prosecution has submitted the evidence, the judge is typically the one that's going to be responding to say yes or no whether they've done that. But they cover for the prosecutor instead, and then yell something about how they do have jurisdiction or whatnot. We're up against the break, Jermaine, so just hold tight. We got plenty of time. We'll be back here on the No Stay Project in just a moment with Jermaine, who got another stay in Alberta. So more success stories to add to markstevens.net. Welcome back to the No Stay Project for I was going to say July. I'm looking right at November 18th. And just like Jermaine was saying, I'll bring him back. Just like Jermaine's saying, the role play is very, very important. We need to do that because otherwise you might freeze up when the judge snaps at you, and they typically do it with a little bit of emotion. And, when they're very bad when it comes to being challenged. So when you're asking them for evidence of jurisdiction and they could just snap at you, I assure you this court has jurisdiction. Without the role playing, you may not be as comfortable following that up with a leading type of question like you said to this judge, which then may cause him to recuse himself in that, hey, is that because you said so or because the evidence does? But welcome back, and so we're talking. You're walking us through what, as the backstory, what's happened up to this point, and so so one of the issues that you brought out was that the judge was openly prosecuting you, and you had been able to call him out on that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so
yeah, he was. Yeah, no, that's right, Mark. He when I asked. I had actually turned to the prosecutor and asked her. Her name was Sarah. Actually, maybe I won't say her full name. So Sarah somebody or another. She was a special prosecutor. They had hired this special prosecutor to deal with OPC litigants, is what they call them out here. I don't know. I guess same thing as a free man on the land. So she brought out Meads versus Meads and all this nonsense. But it was just as simple as that, just showing that the judge was basically answering all the questions of jurisdiction for her. She stood mute. I pointed it out that she wasn't saying anything, and he had to recuse himself because he was doing all the prosecuting, and I pointed it out.
It's amazing he did and did recuse himself. Apparently, it was so obvious that he recused himself. And for those who may not know, if a judge does deny at least in the United States, I'm certain of it for the United States. I'd have to check and make sure if it's the same in Canada and elsewhere, but they have writs also. But if a judge denies a motion to recuse himself, then that is legally pretty much automatic grounds for review on a petition for writ of mandamus, because the judge has a mandatory obligation under their rules that if his impartiality is reasonably questioned, he has to recuse himself. And so that's why, because it's mandatory, it's reviewable by a petition for a writ of mandamus. So you can get that into the higher court and stop the trial court if, in fact, you need to do that. So I have to keep saying this. I want people to see an example, a real-life example of what Jermaine is talking about, of a prosecutor standing mute. And you could be accusing them of prosecutorial misconduct. You're accusing them basically of obstruction of justice because they're arguing against you without evidence, and they stand silent. Watch the Ian Freeman DMV hearing. I was on video. I was not actually in New Hampshire. You have to watch this because this woman didn't say a single word in her own defense, and I accuse her nonstop of misconduct.
That's right. They do that all the time, especially when you're talking about jurisdiction, because they don't have it. So what can they do? They have to just stand mute and expect that the judge will come with, whatever the judges do. Usually it's just a threat that you'll be removed from the court or whatever. Or they'll assert that they do have jurisdiction. One judge, this is another case. We'll get to it, but she just had a copy of the criminal code up there on her desk, and she started waving it around like a goddamn Bible. She's like, you know what I mean? Oh, I have this book, and I have my oath of office, and that's all I need, and I have jurisdiction. I shit you not, Mark. This is the trial following up. This was on October 17th. I filed an appeal on Friday for this. I did get convicted because the second case was broken up into a few trials, right? So I got convicted of, obstruction of justice, right? So it was one of the 5 criminal charges. And this judge was just a blatant religious assertion. I mean, she just like, because I have this book up here, and I got her to bring down her oath of office, actually, and I took a picture of it. So I'm going to use that as an appealable, appealable error?
Yeah.
Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to use that as an appealable error because right there on her oath of office, she had it framed, is, of course, a symbol of the crown and her oath to the queen. So I'm going to use that and say, hey, look, it seems the person that was responsible for refereeing this case has a vested interest in it because she's working for the same people that are coming after me. So, but yeah, it's just like that. That's all they do. They say because this code says so, any person within Canada, is subject to our jurisdiction. But that's all they can say. They don't have any factual evidence of it.
Right, and it's interesting because someone this week, I'm sorry, I can't remember who made it. It was the dude who sent it, and I don't have it on this particular computer. I'll have to pull it up. But there was a study or some kind of research project that was done regarding so-called anti-authority type people like freemen and sovereigns, and the group that you mentioned, the commercial litigators. I can't remember, OIPC. And here they go through, and they're trying to describe how they use vexatious litigation. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I just think it's highly ironic with some added cruelty to it for people to try to, put Crown prosecutors, for example, on a pedestal that, like, they're not engaged in demonstrably vexatious prosecutions, almost everything they do. The fact that they will come in and try to use Meads versus Meads as a substitute for a trial, which of course happened in Saskatoon. The idea that and he actually will say this, I have recordings of it, I don't have to prove this. If that does not fall into the definition of vexatious litigation, then I don't know what does. She stood mute and allowed the judge to take their burden of proof. So at any time through this so-called litigation process, did they produce any evidence at all to support their claim?
Of course not, Mark. They still haven't. I've been asking for 2 years. I've done like 3 trials. The 4th one, of course, they withdrew by now because the last trial I had, I just went in there and I killed it. Although I lost and I got convicted of that charge, I had the judge straight up, of course, prosecuting from the bench, telling me that that she doesn't need my consent, telling me all sorts of nonsense.
Why would she say that, though? Yeah, but let me jump. Why would the judge say she doesn't need your consent?
Something came up about what she called the charging instrument or whatever. I guess it's the paperwork that's up there on the thing, because she was trying to claim that was the evidence, right? That was the evidence. I didn't know what it was. I still to this day I have not seen it. I was asking. I turned to the prosecutor. Do you, Mr. Prosecutor, have this evidence that shows that there's jurisdiction over me? And she was shaking around some paper up there. She called it a charging instrument. And my reply was, of course, I don't know what that is, and I don't consent. And she says, I don't need your consent.
Okay. Well, see, that's not something that we talk about doing on the show, or hopefully they're not talking about that in the role playing. When they say something like that, you ask them, is the evidence proving your Constitution laid out in that charging instrument? So you made a statement, and the context is not really too relevant here. Yeah, well, I just want to point out, because there are new people listening, and this may have went by you. We know that they don't rely on our consent.
Sorry, Mark. No, I agree with you 100%. As I was talking to the guys in the No Province Project, that was my mistake. I just it's completely irrelevant. I know that the paperwork is bullshit. It's probably just the release order. When they release you from jail, they force you to sign this thing, right? So basically, you can't leave the facility until you sign it. So that's probably all she had up there. I never saw it, but I would like to suggest that I think you had recommended not even bothering with the oath of office before on one of your shows, but I think it's a good thing because if they do show you the oath of office, which they did, they brought it down, it was framed, and it says right there, Crown, right? And I got a photo of it. So that means the judge is the Crown, the prosecutor is the Crown, and so is the cop. They're all there. So there is no fair and meaningful hearing. So when you ask the question, do I have a fair and meaningful hearing here today? And they say yes. And then next thing they show you an oath of office that shows that all three of them work for the same organization, right? That's a conflict of interest. And that's where you should move in to say, hey, I motion this court to dismiss the case based on that.
Well, I agree that you want to bring out that there's a conflict of interest, but we've been able to do that for so many, and it's great. If you have documentary proof, that's pretty cool, because now you can hold it up, and if they try to weasel out of the questioning, because the questioning is usually enough. You ask the judge straight out, on whose behalf are you acting today? And I caution you, sir, I am holding a copy of your oath of office, so please answer truthfully. Yeah, I mean, you could do something like that, but you're still wanting to, the question is pretty powerful, and it's why they tend to not answer and instead try to deflect attention away by snapping at you, saying, are you accusing this court of having a conflict of interest, and getting, and trying to intimidate you. So, yeah, I guess depending on what kind of judge you got in there, you could do something like that. Look, like I mentioned, before you answer, I'm holding a copy of your oath of office. Mm-hmm. I wrote about that in Government Indicted because somebody tried to pull that crap on Vin James, and he was able to do a really good job of holding her to and she was openly admitting to representing the Crown. She was just trying to say that she could represent the Crown and still be impartial and independent. So,
right.
So yeah, if you don't need to go through discovery or anything like that to get the oath of office. You could usually get that by going to personnel or to human resources, however they're terming it up there.
Oh, I just asked them in the court, like there was an adjournment, and I said, well, politely, could you please bring back your oath of office? I would like to see it.
Oh, okay.
And she did. She brought it down to trains. Yeah, there was not necessary. You don't have to file anything or do anything fancy. You could just ask them.
I know here in some places where if you want the police officers or the prosecutor's oath of office, maybe even the judge, but definitely for the police officer and the prosecutor, they want you to fill out some kind of document and put your name and the reason why you want it. I'm like, well, I don't need to do that. But in Mesa, they won't give it to you.
Yeah, they told me that the cop doesn't have one. I think if I recall correctly, because I asked. When I asked for the judges, I also asked for everybody else's too. I think they said the cop didn't have one. And also one of the cops admitted he's never read the Constitution after he admitted that it applied to me. I said, do you have personal firsthand knowledge that the Constitution and Code applies to me? This is during cross-examination, by the way. He said, yes, of course it applies to you. Section yada, 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 persons driving within Alberta have to have, license and registration. I said, oh, really? And then, okay, we carried on. I asked a few more questions.
Wait. Hold on here. Let's not gloss over this. He didn't answer your question.
He didn't answer my question. No, and I pointed that out, Mark.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did point that out.
Because him giving you a section is not answering the question as to whether he has personal knowledge that the code applies.
Yeah, and my response was, of course, you're telling me the code applies because it says so.
Yes, but he wasn't answering the question. Sir, just answer the question. Yes or no. Do you have personal knowledge that your Constitution applies to me because I'm physically in Canada? I love when they turn around and they try to weasel out by saying a section of it. So let's first things first. We need you to first be responsive to the question that yes or no, do you have personal knowledge that your Constitution applies to me just because I'm physically in Canada? Oh, you do. You do. They should have been objecting. They usually object to that down here. I'm amazed that they let them answer that in any shape or form. It's usually when they object. Then, if they are going to answer with a section, you can ask them, so you're telling me that section that you just quoted is evidence proving your Constitution applies to me? Okay, so isn't the again a leading question? So isn't the authority for your code the Constitution, not the other way around as you're alleging? Right. So the Constitution is the authority for the code. Now that we cleared that up, could you answer what evidence do you have, if any, that would prove the Constitution applies to me because I'm physically in Canada? Don't say the section because that we've already established that's not evidence.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great, Mark. I got to sharpen up there a bit. I know, like I've got that in my mind, but I don't think I articulated it quite that well in court. But of course, they go to the Traffic Safety Act all the time, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Does the Constitution apply to me? It says the Traffic Safety Act in some section of it. And I'm like, honestly, it's such a stupid response. Sometimes I don't even know what to say to that.
I get that. I really do, get that where you're just so floored by the stupidity of the answer. Is we got to stick to the Socratic method. We just have to ask the question. So you're telling me that the Safety Act is somehow evidence proving your Constitution applies to me? Really? And then we've already covered how we... But you called them on it. Make sure that that's their position. Say it in an incredulous way. Like, really? You're trying to sell me on the idea that the Safety Act is evidence the Constitution applies. So it's not the other way around. The Constitution is not evidence that the Safety Act applies to me. Now, I'm surprised though that the prosecution did not object to the line of questioning, right at the start, because whenever I or most other people ask for evidence proving the Constitution applies, the prosecution loses their mind objecting on the basis that the witness is not qualified to answer.
Yeah, no, he never did that. There was 4 cops that testified. He never once said anything.
Holy
Except
crap.
for, he did this one time when I asked a hypothetical question. I said, well, if you're in Walmart, right, as a patron, or McDonald's or whatever I said, if you're in Walmart as a patron, just buying a hamburger, and the manager comes and tells you to start mopping floors, wouldn't you ask that question? What evidence do you have that I have to mop your goddamn floor? I asked this to one of the cops. It's another way of asking, what evidence do you have that the Constitution and codes apply? I just put it in general terms, like I was using Walmart as an example. And the prosecutor did jump in at that point. He said, I don't think he's qualified to answer hypothetical questions.
Yeah, I don't know if the prosecutor should have thrown in, he's qualified to answer a hypothetical. He could have just objected on grounds it's a hypothetical. And I wouldn't suggest asking a question like that anyway. Not in court. I don't think you need to do that. I think you could have done better at really hammering away at his claim that the Constitution applies to you just because you're physically in Canada. That's the foundational claim, and that's what we should be hitting. And I'm just surprised that the prosecutor didn't object. However, even if he hadn't objected, you still should be able to get the witness, if he's answering the questions, to get him to admit that he doesn't have such personal firsthand knowledge. You could ask him point blank.
Well,
Literally, we're up against the break, so one of the questions you can ask to show that he doesn't have personal knowledge, ask him what the Constitution is literally. What is it? And he'll get that glassy-eyed look on his face. So just hold tight. My name is Marc Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. We're going to go into the second hour of Anarchy Radio in just a few moments, so don't go away. We got a lot to cover. Welcome back to the No State Project. It is the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio here on the Liberty Radio Network. November 18th, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. The number is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign, 2020 hashtag. And you can also reach me at Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype there, and you can get into the No State Project Skype chat to do some role-playing. You can also use the link at markstevens.net. It will bring you directly into that. It's under upcoming events, and an upcoming event, libertopia.org, libertopia.org. Going to be doing Libertopia in May 3rd through May 6th, 2018. Definitely go to libertopia.org and sign up today. I will be there. Hopefully, well, we should be pretty certain I'm speaking, and we'll have a blues jam. So we're going to have some fun that there weekend. And, of course, we'll do the show live from there, as we always do. Always a lot of fun. I want to bring back Jermaine. We're talking in some detail about what happened with Jermaine. A lot of good stuff. So if you are looking to defend yourself against these code violations, then definitely keep listening. And whatever you miss, we will have video. The audio will be up today, but we'll also have sometime Monday morning, we'll have the video, but it'll be audio only with graphics. So like when we're talking about the Socratic method, for those who don't know, we'll put things up like that. And Jermaine, if you were comfortable, I know you mentioned the judge's name. Maybe we can find pictures of them and get them in the video. But to get back to what you're talking about, there's good news and bad news. You've got to stay on one of the charges. You were convicted on one of the others, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So we're talking about this ridiculous trial.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting some feedback or something there.
Yeah, that was bad.
So yeah, I did get convicted of one charge, but mind you, I filed an appeal on Friday, and so that's going to be reset for an appeal date in February. So I immediately appealed it. I gave them the notice right there when they found me guilty of it. I said, "Here's my notice of appeal." And I left the courtroom and I began my appeal process. I got the copy of the four of this document, 3 of that document, 2 of this document, jumping through all the hoops. And actually I got them to waive the transcript fee as well.
Wow.
I went there and, I explained to them that they had previously told me that I had the right to, due process of law by asking, of course, the Socratic questions. And they had also said that I have the right to an appeal. And so I used that against them. I said, well, you guys have told me X, Y, Z, and I don't have money to pay for a transcript, which you guys require for an appeal. So, again, they were boxed in a corner, and they actually paid for it. I didn't have to pay for the transcripts, which can be, $300 each, easily.
They could be $3,000 easy.
Yeah, depending. Yeah, exactly. Depending on, they charge you per character. I thought when I found that out, I was like, my God, this thing called money, like they charge per character. So that's like each individual letter on your transcript has a dollar amount. It's like 0.07 cents or something like that. And it's ridiculous.
Oh, and they've had voice to text technology for a decade or more.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. The prosecutors, I also found this out, the prosecutors have digital access to the transcripts, and they still charge people. They have been telling me for months, because I've been trying to get transcripts, they've been telling me for months that, the transcript office is a private company. We have to pay them. There's no way we can waive the fees, blah, blah, blah. These are the clerks telling me at the desk, at the transcript desk. We can't waive the fees. It's a third-party company. Bullfoot. Okay, I know they can, because when I was incarcerated, they paid for it, of course. So I just used that against them. I said, hey, look, I still don't have money. So, you got to pay for it. If you say I have the right to an appeal, I want to appeal. So I just used that against them, and they did. But the thing is that the prosecutors have digital access to the transcripts, so they can review their own cases, and they still charge people $300, $400, $500, who knows how much, hundreds of dollars for, transcripts.
Well, that could be the deal breaker for an appeal. I've worked with people where the transcripts were so much money because in some places you have to get the transcript from only approved vendors. And obviously, that's a point that they can raise their rates by saying, hey, we're only one of 3 approved vendors for the Supreme Court. And that's broken people where they're looking at, $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000 to have a transcript done. Because let's say you had 2 or 3 hearings and they lasted a few hours apiece, and then maybe an all-day trial. So it can run into thousands very easily, and that can make or break an appeal. And it is about, they want as much money thrown at their system as possible. And it's disgraceful, obviously. You're dealing with criminals. That the prosecution, and that's one of the big complaints that even lawyers have, is that prosecutors have basically almost an unlimited budget. And they can pay for experts. They can keep you, they can keep you buried in paperwork, and to pull such a douchebag move, which I mentioned before. I'll have to do this in a video, I guess, where the judge will force you to participate and then gets pissed off at you because you don't know the rules of a hearing you were forced into. And it's the same thing here, that they force you into the situation and they'll say, well, you have every right to appeal this. And then they don't tell you if you can afford it.
Yeah.
And why should I have to go through a financial proctoral exam, okay, and have to lay out all my finances if I want it waived? You forced me into this situation. You couldn't do the right thing at any point in time. You couldn't even do so little as to just sit back and let the prosecution make their case. No, you had to actively prosecute me. So it's a real slap in the face. And anybody who's under the impression that you're going to get justice if you're poor or you just can't afford these exorbitant fees, you're wrong. In Minnesota, it's a minimum of $550 to file a petition or a complaint into court.
You're kidding me.
No, $550. Those SOBs even charge you for a habeas corpus.
Wow.
That is
not that bad out here.
That is more. I thought that the $450 or $425 that they wanted at the Court of Appeals a few years ago in San Francisco, the U.S. Court of Appeals, I thought that was just outrageous. And then I find out that that's a discounted price in Minnesota. I'm talking local courts in Minnesota. And of course, the appellate or Supreme Court, $550. And what happens? You really have to have the money to throw away, because if you're in Minnesota, they'll do just like any other place. You'll pay the filing fee, and they won't accept jurisdiction.
Right.
So that's like going to buy a car, laying down the money for the car, and then them saying, well, we don't have anything to sell you. We don't have an inventory.
Yeah.
Oh, can I have my money back? No, we have to process that payment. So, yeah, Nick, sorry. And why do they get away with it? Because they're criminals.
And that's what I thought too. That's why I had a motion hearing to get this transcript fee waived, because I thought, well, wait a minute. If I pay $300, $400, $500 for these transcripts and they're like, hey, we're not going to do your appeal for you, or they don't accept my appeal application, well, then what you know what I mean? Because they tell you have to order it first. When you file your appeal, you have to have 3 copies of the transcript with you there before they even accept your application of appeal. Okay? So
wow.
You've got to come out of pocket first or get them to waive the fee. And I was determined to get the fee waived. I was not about to pay for a transcript for this appeal.
Yeah, so, well, I understand. We're up against a break, so we're not going to be able to hear you, so just hold tight. Yeah, usually that's a little different than what they do out here. What they do out here is you order the transcript after you file your notice of appeal, but with electronic with the way things are and how fast you can have a transcript, voice to text and whatnot, it's crazy. We'll be back with Jermaine in Alberta in just a few moments, so don't go away. We are live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Most Saturdays from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, 1 to 4 if you're there on the West Coast, which I'm hoping to get back to pretty soon. We got to get something set up, not just for Libertopia. That's the weekend of May 6th in next year in San Diego, but back to the Living Tea Brewing Company on Wisconsin Avenue in Oceanside, getting back there and doing the show and having another blues jam. Hopefully we'll get that in the next few weeks. Want to bring back to the show, if you want to join me at 632-218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 and the # or hashtag. And Frank Rizzo 3 is how you connect with me on Skype also. We're talking with Jermaine in Alberta and how unfair the system is. So that's pretty good. So you had a hearing to get the transcript fee waived, and so congrats on that. That's a pretty big deal to anyone who's ever been involved. And you didn't fill out any financial documents, did you?
No, actually, the prosecutor, once he saw my motion, he just, I guess, took it upon himself to print it off, and he brought it to court.
Oh,
so it actually wasn't hard. I just filed a motion. In the motion, I just I put that, unable to afford transcripts. Transcripts are required for filing an appeal. Please waive fee. Thank you. And I filed that in an affidavit at the court, at the clerk of court, and they set me a motion hearing. I got there. And one of the justices came out in the hall to talk to me and said, "What are you here for?" And I explained, and I said, "Okay, we'll talk to the justice." I walked in there, and Adam Drew, the same prosecutor who withdrew the charges that I got the registered mailing from, he had the transcripts with him already, so it was that easy.
Nice. As far as the documents, I'd like to get them posted, but I can't post what you sent me. So if you can get better pictures or scan them.
The letter of
the ones you sent me about the stay.
Yeah, sure. So what do you want me to do?
If you can get a better picture with your camera or scan them, because the way they are now, it's not really easy to read.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll try to scan these and email it to you.
Cool, that would be great. And for those who are asking, whatever material, whatever of the live broadcast here on LRN.FM, whatever you miss live, all the audio is posted after the show at markstevens.net. So you'll have the MP3 of that to download, and then in a few days I have also the video on YouTube, but it's just going to be graphics. So to answer those inquiries there. So don't worry about what you may have missed. So, overall, your experience here. What is your impression? And you spent a lot of time doing this. What's your impression of has your impression of the of the legal system and government in general, has it changed?
Yeah, it definitely changed. I was talking to my grandma about this today when we got the mailing. I don't even know. It's just like how you're programmed, through the coming up through the public schools. You have this idea in your head that the government is there for you. They're good. They're going to protect you, yada, yada, yada. And then you have a negative experience and it's like, holy shit, excuse my French, but your mind is blown and you realize that that's all a facade and they are there just for profit. It's completely commercially motivated. That's probably the most impressed point that I received from the whole experience is that it's completely financially motivated. All they care about is getting that dollar from you. Even in a criminal charge, like when I got convicted of the criminal charge, they taxed me with even though I didn't have to do any more time, they said, "Oh, excuse me, there's also $100 victim surcharge that comes with the conviction." I said, "Well, what victim? Who did I harm?" She said that I had harmed the public by obstructing the police officer.
Can you? Wow.
Yeah.
Can you describe the actual harm in specifics? Wow. That is, they like to say
Robbie,
that against the peace and dignity of the state.
Yeah. And I think, Robbie, we were speaking in Skype the other day. He said exactly what I feel as well, is that I quite have just as easily gone back to going into the ideology of statism and believing in government and all that stuff if they would have just done the right thing and been like, hey, he's right, and dismissed the case and not put me through all this bullshit, But it's the fact that they did drag me through this, kidnap me, treat me with such disrespect, slander me, all this stuff that has happened over the past 2 years, that there's no way I could go back into believing government or the state or any of that stuff. I hung it up right next to Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. What I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I got to say, and I'm glad it's all over. This November 28th, 30th, 28th to 30th, they withdrew the charges, so there's going to be no more trials. I do have one more alleged appearance. It's going to be in December 8th, and that's for a bail forfeiture in regards to these matters. But that'll be closed too, because I'll just bring this letter and I'll say, well, hey, look, the charges were withdrawn, so they should return my bail.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's the way it goes. It's gone pretty well so far, and I got to mention that if you do swear, it's okay. You don't have to say "excuse my French." I don't want you alienating my Quebec listeners. Hey, I was worried. I was worried that wasn't going to land. Okay.
I just don't want to offend anybody out there. Just in case. I don't mean to swear. I just, I'm a regular guy.
Oh, I understand. I saw it as an opportunity for some kind of, socially or culturally aware humor, and that's the reason why I said anything. But I know I got probably people in Florida saying, "What the hell?" Okay, so I'm a skeptic, and I need the evidence right there myself. So there was a lot of stuff when I first started getting into this that I just didn't believe, and so it really came to light, and it finally changed my belief when I confronted these people, and then repeatedly getting the same reactions from this, and seeing how they operate, having police officers sexually molest me right in front of my wife, and to see how they cover it up and they don't care and they do whatever they want and how cruel they are, and just how across the board they cannot. This is the thing that really does it too. That across the board they cannot support their claims, because if they had the evidence, they would just provide it. We're up against the break, so appreciate the call. Just hold on tight for a moment there, Jermaine. My name is Marc Stevens here on the No State Project. We'll be back with your calls in just a moment, so don't go away. We're in the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. And by anarchy, of course, what we mean is an absence of rulers. We do not believe in the concept of rulers and having a ruling class. We agree to having rules, of course, but basic principles of right and wrong, and we, as anarchists, believe that these rules apply to everybody, even to groups. Even to groups who call themselves government, or the state, or the crown. All those such stupid things that is just trying to get rid of the consequences of their actions, to try to make immoral to be moral by calling it legal. It's wrong for me, it's immoral, deeply immoral for me to force strangers to give me money rather. And they, through some wordsmithing, want to say that it is legal if we do it. Then people just make the leap that, well, if it's legal, it must be moral. That's right, because dropping bombs on brown people in the Middle East, innocent men, women, and children attending weddings and whatnot, that's moral if done in the name of war for the state. As anarchists, we reject that fallacious reasoning. The rules apply to everybody. If you want to join me, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, and the passcode is 2020. And just briefly before we bring Matt up, Appreciate just a little more patience. So someone is saying here in one of the chats, William, I would love if I can get a dismissal, but I may just piss them all off. Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're going to be yelling and screaming, and not all of them are unhinged psychos. Most of them are not like Richard Noble, the big dick up there in Detroit, that are going to put you in jail for asking a question. And yes, that has happened, but it's several thousand times we've reported on the show about people going into court. It's only happened a few times. So, yes, you may get under their skin. They tend not to tolerate challenges well. But keep in mind that when you go in there, you're just asking questions. You're being respectful. You're saying ma'am or sir, and you want responsive answers. But you're asking questions that are gutting their whole facade. They're putting up this thing that they're the good guy, and it's not true in any shape or form. So you got to keep that in mind. So if somebody, just imagine, hey, look at the hate people that are anarchists who have shed this belief of ruling classes and whatnot, and this right-left dichotomy, crap. Look at the hate that you get if you mention that their actions may be immoral by eating animals. I can't believe the hate that I get for that. You guys, you can do what you want, but I do not like someone telling me that my actions are immoral. Then, what? You're an anarchist and you say that the Democrats and Republicans are immoral because they steal and they kill people. You're making a moral judgment on their actions. Get used to it. When you live in society, we're going to make moral judgments. If you disagree with my moral judgment of an action that you're taking, like, say, needlessly killing another, sentient being, make an argument that shows it is moral. Don't just tell me, I don't like when somebody makes a comment about my... Just counter it with a well-thought-out, lucid argument. The problem is you don't have one. It's just like anarchy. There is no logical, coherent argument against anarchy because you'd be making an argument for a necessary evil, for a criminal organization to have control over a society. And there is no moral and logical argument in favor of that. Anyway, let me get back to our calls. He's been on before. Matt from Houston, welcome back to the big show.
Hey, Mark, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you sound great. A little bit of background noise, but that's fine considering what Houston was, went through a few months ago.
Yeah. I'm just outside. It's it's a beautiful day and the wind's blowing a little bit, so I just want to make sure. Just let me know if you can't hear me, and I'll, step out and.
You sound good. You got an update?
All right, cool. But I wanted to start off. That was, of all the times I've ever been on hold, that was by far the most rewarding hour I spent, on hold waiting to get my call answered, I gotta say. So many things hearing you and Jermaine, go back and forth. It was very rewarding, and I learned a lot.
Cool.
And next, how I've, going through life, I've kind of realized, more and more that, things are simple. When you get down to brass tacks, it's really not that complicated. Whether it's, oil refineries, that I see, these big, pieces of machinery that, are just massive and took a lot of man hours and time and energy and thought, to, cell phones or, whatever. I've learned that, when you get down to brass tacks, the bare bones, you had to start somewhere, and thinking simply. And Occam's razor has really, resonated with me. When you got a problem, answer to a question, the simplest solution is most often the correct one. So going through.
Well, you're gonna. While the dog sounds adorable, it's really.
Oh, okay.
It's a little.
I'll go inside. Hold on. I got a busy neighborhood. All right. How's that?
That's good. Hope the dog's okay.
Yeah, no, she's just barking at some neighbors. Anyway, but going through the process, doing all the studying and listen to, everybody go through their thought process and the different avenues from, doing the sovereign thing to how your mindfulness and your approach to it all. You really, can't figure it out until you experience it. So that goes for, court cases, defending yourself for the first time, trying to figure out what you want to do as a job, a career, a hobby, or finding the perfect recipe for seitan.
That's right. You heard that.
yeah, I heard that. Hey man, that resonated with me too, dude. I went through the same thing. I had my fumbles with that, but yeah, I've almost dialed it in my preferred method of seitan, but that's another topic. But yeah, on the update. So do you recall what we do you recall what we talked about last time?
But not all the listeners do. So even if I spoke to you off air, it's better. We always need you to give us a short update. A short backstory so that they understand the update.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got pulled over. Some sneaky peace officers followed me into an AutoZone parking lot. I was just going to go get some auto parts. They didn't have a warrant, didn't have a weapon, didn't use any, aggressive language. I simply, stated that I didn't have identification. I gave them my name, and then I pretty much told them, I'll take the tickets because they were ticketable offenses. But the fact that I,
okay, I'm sorry. We're actually up against a break, so just hold tight. So we're
all right.
We have the part that the ID. Give a ticket.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just hold tight. My name is Marc Stevens, listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. If you want to join us, it's 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020. We'll be back with Matt in Houston with his update in just a moment, so don't go away. Welcome back. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio, and we're joined by Matt in Houston, who's giving us an update on his adventure in legal land. It's a traffic ticket. So you didn't have ID. You told him that, and then you said, just give me the ticket. Okay, so briefly, what happened after that?
They asked me to exit the vehicle. I asked them if I was being detained. I didn't go, into the wild, making accusations. I just simply tried to state that, I don't have a legal obligation to get out of the vehicle. And at that point, the officer just was like, I'm not talking to you anymore. And I said, okay. But I need to know why. Am I being arrested? He said, no. So I'm being detained. He said, yes. I said, okay, so I'm not under arrest. That's clear. Anyway, all that stuff was on body cam. Eventually, they forcefully entered my vehicle, like 4 or 5 cops, threw me down on the ground. I actually had to go to the hospital after I got out of jail because I didn't get any medical treatment while I was in. They initially were charging me with resisting arrest, and they could have added some other charges, but they decided not to. And eventually it was reduced to interference with public duties. And as you guys know, or if you don't know, that's kind of just a catch-all. It depends on where you're at, what that exactly means, but it could be something very simple, is just talking to an officer and they don't want to talk to you. And,
contempt of cop.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So went to jail, did that whole thing. Anyway, I got your your documents, motion to dismiss, motion in, is it Lyman or Lemony?
They pronounce it in limine.
Okay, yeah, because you said, I think you would say Lyman, and then when I went to the clerk at the court, she said Limony. I was like, oh, it just sounded kind of funny. Anyway,
yeah, well, it's not an English word.
Yeah. So on October 31st, which was like the next day after you sent me the documents, I went and I hand-delivered them. And I was correct due to all the flooding and, moving around of different government offices. It did get to the court when I went to it was actually my second court date, because the first one I requested a continuance. It was the same court, but a different judge. So I spoke with the first judge, Diane Bull, and then when I went back the second time, I saw her briefly. As we were waiting in the courtroom, she came out and actually swore in one of the DAs. So he was fresh and brand new, and that was when I realized, he's new to this. And anyway, I talked to the other judge. So she left after the swearing, and then the other judge came in. It wasn't documented anywhere. Her name wasn't, posted. I'm kind of curious if that means anything, but so dealing with a totally different person, I tried to, ask her the questions, and she answered a few of them. I got to about, is the court bound by Supreme Court rulings, in criminal cases? And she said, which ones? And I said, well, all of them. And she said, no. And at that point, she was kind of annoyed. She was getting a little edgy about me asking these questions, and just said, well, we can't proceed until, you make a determination on what you want to do. So I said, well, I will be, representing myself, and that was pretty much it.
Okay.
I confirmed with her that she had the motion to dismiss. She did, and I also confirmed that the DA had my motion to dismiss and the discovery request and Brady request.
Okay, but did you ask the judge? The main line of questions, has the prosecution met their prima facie burden proving that the Constitution applies just because you're physically in Texas?
I tried to get to that. She was resistant, and I figured, I'll just wait. I did ask if who the burden of proof was on, but I didn't get as far as asking, can they prove, do they have facts and evidence?
Yeah, that's got to be
constitutionalized.
Yeah, that's got to be our first, really the first thing out of the gate, because they tend to start, getting, irritated, not answering the question. So that's why I've mentioned for the last few years, we just go for the throat, and you've got to go straight into that. Has the prosecution met their prima facie burden, showing evidence that the Constitution applies just because I'm physically in Texas? And that's got to be.
And that's something that I'll apply. I'll apply that next time. I'm a noob. I was really nervous. I totally fumbled and slurred my first words to her when I was,
Jeez.
So I was nervous, I tend to do that, but with experience, the second time around, my second court case, it was reset for 10 days later. I went when I went to go check in. The clerk again. This is actually the second time it happened. Previous appearance, she was like, "I don't have your admonishment filed," and I was like, "Well, I did that last time, and I have a copy of the paperwork, that I filled out for, basically, I'm competent and I can, I choose to defend myself." And she was like, "Well, that doesn't mean anything. It's not, the admonishment isn't filed with us." And I was like, "Okay, shit." And then about half an hour later, she came back and was like, "Oh, I found your admonishment," because it was actually, under another judge. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she was very nice and said, "I'm going to let the state know that you wish to speak with them." And I said, "Okay." So at that point, all said and done, I never talked to the judge, and it was actually Diane Bull, the other judge. So it's flip-flopped again. And I went out into the hallway, spoke privately with the DA, and I should have brought my phone to record. And then it was the newbie. It was Mr. White. And, you've talked about it. I've heard everybody else talk about it. They'll literally say whatever they can to intimidate and coerce you into, making a plea. He went so far as to say, here's your three options. And then the last one was like a PTI, and he was like, it'll get dismissed. And he was like, man, it'll be, it's your best bet, man. We don't give this to everybody. And I was like, well, yeah, dude, it was really funny because I was laughing on the inside. I never made any claims. I never argued, about what happened with the police officer. I left all that out and just stuck to my questions. And I asked, do you have facts and evidence to support your claim, stating that the Constitution and lies apply? And he did basically it works for everybody else, and that's how we do it. So, that's how it goes. And I was like, well,
oh my God.
And I kept, Mark, it gets better. I kept asking. I just said, okay, let me get this straight. And I asked him specifically, okay, is the court bound by the Constitution of the United States and the state of Texas? Without hesitation, yes. He said, yes, absolutely. Okay, is the charge you brought against me a criminal in nature? Yes. How do you acquire standing? And Mark, he looked at me with like he had never heard the term standing and said, what do you mean? What is that? And holding back my laughter, I talked about corpus delicti, and in order for it to be a crime, there must be an injured party.
Right. Well, there's a problem with what you're saying. You gave him a way out, and to where he could kind of derail the conversation because you didn't ask the right type of question. And we're up against the break, so I'll mute you up. We'll get back to that. My name is Marc Stevens. We're going into the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. We'll be back with Matt in Houston in just a moment. I'm Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted, which you can get at markstevens.net. Here for the third hour of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, for November 18th, 2017. Remember, libertopia.org for Libertopia 2018 be the weekend of May 3rd through the 6th. So go to libertopia.org and check that out. I will be speaking, and we almost certainly will be having a blues jam. So definitely check that out. And it's a fantastic, it is just a wonderful venue to do this. So definitely check it out. libertopia.org. And I want to bring back, because I put this question to one of the chats, that welcome back, Matt. That I think there was a problem with the question that you gave to the prosecutor, and I think that that when we do this and make this mistake, it tends to derail the conversation depending on the context, and most of the time. So you asked the prosecutor how they acquire standing, and I think there's a problem with the. I think you have I think the problem is the form of the question. What type of questions should we always be asking prosecutors, judges, and cops and whatnot, bureaucrats?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. What's what type of questions should we always be framing and asking them?
Well, I can't quote you specifically, but I guess this speaks to how my
Well, it's okay.
Growing understanding.
Have you been doing the role playing?
I have not been able to get into the role playing. I've been working a lot. And I haven't really had a lot of time.
You're going to need to do that.
I did a little bit of role playing with my partner. I know that I really need to get in there and is it on Skype?
Yes.
But no, I just haven't.
Yeah, you're going to need to do that, because you always want to ask a leading question. A yes or no question. You want the information you're trying to elicit in the question. You don't want to leave it open-ended. So James in Alaska was the one that got it right in the chat. You always want to ask a leading question. When you ask him, how do you acquire standing, you're giving him an opportunity to monologue. Okay? No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. And just, again, you want to focus your role playing, you want to focus your attention on the very foundation of the prosecution's case. And that is, and again, we ask a leading, we get there by asking leading questions. It's not a leading question to ask him, of course, what evidence do you have that just because I'm physically in Texas, your Constitution code apply? It's a devastatingly effective question because there is no evidence. We know that in advance. But we get to that point by asking a leading question. You don't ask him, how do you acquire jurisdiction over me? You ask him a leading question being, do you operate under the presumption that just because I'm physically in Texas, your Constitution applies to me? So he has the option there to either admit it or deny it. And
okay, yeah, and that was actually what came next. I know I that was incorrect, and I should have just stuck to a leading question, yes or no. But immediately after that, he gave me a vague answer. It's there, basically, like it's there. There does not need to be an allegation of injury. And I said, okay, well, I mean, do you have facts and evidence to prove that, the Constitution and laws apply to me, just because I'm physically, in Texas? And he said, the same old thing, without, it was very vague, just, it happened in Harris County, so you are, liable, because you were in Harris County when it happened. So, I mean, with that response, like, what do you think? What's your take?
Well, he's repeating all he's doing is repeating the claim and throwing in a political word. So that's why you ask him a follow-up question, of course, a leading question. So, say, look, aren't you just repeating the claim? Aren't you just saying that your laws apply, your Constitution applies, just because I'm physically in Texas? Isn't it? So, well, I went through this. I go through it all the time. I had a tax agent I mentioned last week where we did that, and I asked him. You don't tell him he's repeating his question. You just ask him, aren't you just repeating your claim? Yeah, we already know that I was physically in Texas. What evidence, if any, is there that your Constitution applies just because I'm here? That's how I do that. Yeah. I don't, you have to recognize, of course, this is why the role-playing is so important. You have to recognize whether you're getting a responsive answer or not. And that's why leading questions are great, because it's easy. It's either, if it's not yes or no, he's not answering the question. So you may just have to ask the question again. But this other thing.
Simple.
Well, it is a very simple process. The difficult part is going in and dealing with people who could hurt you very badly and not even remember your name. It's going, and that's why the role playing is so important. Yes, the underlying principles are very, very simple. You're asking leading questions to bring out contradictions. You want to make sure that you have their position correct so that they can't weasel out later so instead of contradicting themselves, they can throw the attention back on you and say that you're taking them out of context, which is really, really common. And another one is, I didn't say that. And that's why I write that stuff down. And look, and I'll take a moment here to say, I know better than anybody, okay, that having your words read back to you is as irritating as hell. I hate that, okay? I'm doing it for a particular reason. I'm trying to get them to do the right thing or to contradict themselves so badly that I can use it against them. So I read it back to them knowing it's going to irritate them for no other reason than I'm just talking too much. I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get to a certain point. And yes, in court, it's not necessarily something you want to do to the judge and get him really pissed off. You want to minimize that. But when we're talking with a tax agent on the phone, fine. Do the right thing. And as I said, well, sir, let me finish. You said, and I've already repeated it like 4 times, and I'll just real briefly here. You said that I've really stumped you. You said you don't know how to answer. And then you now said you do not want to answer my questions of evidence that you may have without counsel present. And I did that like 4 times trying to get this guy to commit to something. So you got to do the role playing though. You gotta. And your partner may be pretty good. I don't know. But you get in a chat with people who have done this, who have already gone in and spoken to the prosecutors. They've spoken to cops. They've cross-examined. They've done hearings with judges. And you get through a few sessions with them, you're going to be much better prepared when you go in with the real thing. And that's why, like, when I talk to people, if I ask you a question and you can't answer, you're definitely not prepared to go to court because I'm not a threat.
Yeah.
Except to bogus arguments. Oh, and the music came in on that. That was great timing. Well, I know you couldn't hear that, so just hold tight for a second. We'll finish up in the next segment, Matt. My name is Marc Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. We'll be back and finishing with Matt's adventure in Legal Land in just a few moments. If you want to join me, it's 218-632-9399, passcode 2020 with the #. Glad to be back with you here, and appreciate everyone tuning in. This November 18th, 2017. And remember, the website, markstevens.net, will have all the audio of today's live broadcast up at markstevens.net and on my YouTube channel with a video with graphics on sometime Monday. We'll get that up there. So, but definitely check out the video from last time and let me know what you think about that. Hopefully I got my video settings right. I know it should be head and shoulders 100% better than a video for the live stream, but I got some good graphics in there, so it's a really instructive episode like today's. So let's get back to Matt in Houston. So how does this end?
Hey, okay, so yeah, so wrap it up. Give you some context of how the whole thing went down. He said out loud, this case is nothing to us. It's not like it's sitting on Kim Ogg's desk and, we need to get to this. And I'm like, well, I'm spending this time doing this. He's like, well, I know it's important to you, but to us, it's not a big deal. He had not reviewed my motion to dismiss. He had not reviewed the Brady request. He handed over a redacted police report. It had the arresting officer's name blacked out.
Wait a minute. Oh gosh, the arresting officer's name is redacted.
Yes, yes, sir.
Jeez,
I know. It's laughable, and the look on his face. I can't really. It was just kind of like, that look when you see something for the first time and you're like, oh, like shit, okay. Yeah, he hadn't reviewed it. It truly was not important, like you said earlier. They get ton.
I get that, but I don't want, because I have to get to some other calls, so I want to make sure we can finish in a second. What is his reasoning to redact the police officer's name?
I had no idea, and then he told me that I couldn't see the video because it was on a government portal and I didn't have access to it. I was like, well, did you review the Brady request that I hand delivered to your office on October 31st? And they turned to me and was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, well, that, I that was legitimate and you've had plenty of time. I need to have, that evidence, in order to defend myself intelligently. I need to have, I need to understand all this stuff. And he was like, well, I could probably burn you a copy. I was like, probably.
Probably?
You need to. Yeah, I was like, you need to, yeah.
Well,
it was.
I wouldn't have been able to resist being a smart ass and saying, "Oh, I understand." So whether you comply with due process and are fair is just a matter of probability. It's not something you're supposed to do, but you may do it if you feel like. And what? Burn a copy? It's 2017. This other excuse he gave about it being on a government server or something, and you can't say my gosh, 64 gig. Flash drives are under $30 now.
Yeah.
Well,
to speak on like you would have had a hard time holding yourself back from being a smartass. Well, when I first shook his hand, and literally the first thing he said after he introduced himself was, "Okay," with a smugly suave demeanor. I got to do my due diligence here and advise you should go seek legal counsel. So when it came around to that situation with the Brady, I said, well, I think that you should probably do your due diligence and read the motions that I hand delivered to you, so we can move forward. It was just kind of funny. I didn't get
what's his name?
Big attitude about it. But
what's his name?
Tyler White.
Oh, sorry, you said White before. Tyler White.
Harris County Criminal Court of Law, number 11, misdemeanor division.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. I'll look him up. I'm sure I could find something. But unlike the IRS agents that I mentioned before, that Nicole L. Mullen, and that's Mullin as spelled on the form letters, has no internet presence. There's nothing for a Nicole L. Mullen with that spelling. So it's a fake name. But this is a real name, so we'll be able to get something about him.
And just to finish up, sorry about being long-winded. At the very end, he's like, you don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to trial. He's like, I know this system. Kind of like, hey, man, I know this, man. I'm trying to be real with you, man. You don't want to go to trial. And I was like, well,
real bully.
Why? But, I want to get this resolved amicably.
He sounds like an abusive spouse. You don't want to test me. Right?
Yeah.
A typical bully.
He did it. He wasn't. He took the route of like, good cop, bad cop. Like, I'm just doing my job. Hey, man, take this plea. We don't give this out. You should do that. Hey, dude, you don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to trial, man. Like, I'm doing you a favor. I'm giving you some solid advice.
Oh, yeah. It's the typical abuser. You don't want to go to the police because you don't want to be put through. You don't want to report this. You don't want to go through all the, and it's easy to just let this go. Just let it, forget about it. I'll send you flowers or something.
It's not a big deal, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. But at the very end, he kept trying to get away and saying, I got more people, to talk to. This isn't, I got to go. I got to go. So I just said, screw it. I had a copy of the motion in limine in my, on my person, and I went ahead and filled out, the date and my name, and went to the clerk. Her name was Rachel. Very nice lady, very helpful, and gave me some simple instructions, and answered all my questions. And I went ahead and just filed the motion in limine because I figured, in my thought, they had plenty of time to read the request and gather the evidence and present it to me, like I asked. And 2 appearances. They had like almost a month, Yeah. So and then when I spoke to him in person and he still, did not produce it, I said, you know what, fine. And I can file a motion anytime. I just went ahead and did it right there. Got a copy, and we'll see what happens. But if you could just answer this one quick question, what are your thoughts on subrogation?
Segregation?
Subrogation.
Subrogation?
Subrogation.
Well, I'm up against a break. I'm going to have to answer this one off air. I appreciate I appreciate the update, and let us know, and good luck, and get into the role playing, okay?
I will, Mark. Thanks, man.
All right, no problem. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a moment. Don't go away. Yes, we're back. 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. And just real quick, before we bring up another call, I want to just address something that Matt had brought up. Subrogation. They don't typically allow it. It's supposed to be where one person is entitled to enforce the rights of another for one's own benefit. And like what it says here, the right of subrogation typically arises by operation of law, but can only arise by statute or by agreement. It's just like with standing. Someone, you can only raise your own legal rights that were violated, not somebody else's. I don't see that, he's using this to benefit us in any way. But if someone is more familiar with that, then go ahead. I don't immediately see any way we could use that. They don't let us even speak for somebody else when they're sitting right there, let alone act on someone's behalf. So anyway, let's get back to the calls. He's been on the show before. We have Mr. Black from Pittsburgh. Welcome back, Mr. Black.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man.
Your volume's really low, though.
Hold on. What'd you say?
Your volume is really low.
Hold on. How about now?
Not much better. I got your volume all the way up. I can barely hear you.
How about now? Is it still low?
Hey, there you go. Now we got a winner.
Okay, then. Yeah, I always want to let you know what good work you're doing and everything. You're like one of the first guys, again, I started listening to about 3.5 years ago. But all the stuff you're putting out there is really good, but the bottom line is these people are just trying to steal your money. That's all they're trying to do. They're stealing your labor, your time, because they don't have no right to have you in court, because they never ever can prove standing, ever. For the most part, I don't say for the most part, but for the most part, they're just trying to revenue you and just get your money. And the attorneys that are in these courts, they're all deceptive criminals and they're all liars. And really, the ones in public office and the ones that allegedly represent you and prosecute you, they're all just, deceivers and liars. Because you got too many people out here in jail for victimless crimes, just making money off you. So, from my experience, I never see, like, on a magistrate level or any state courts or anything under the appellate court level where you're getting any real, like, remedy Because for the most part, I really haven't seen them really just dismiss cases, when it's viewed against the state. I never really seen it too much. What about yourself?
Repeat the question.
I never seen them really just dismiss a case when it's, you have I call police officers revenue agents. When they bring you in there for a citation.
Sure. For
money. I've never seen, if you bring put a motion of dismissal there where they just dismiss the case based on what you're saying with the law. I've never seen it, really. I've seen them argue. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a whole success story part of my website. So if you just hit the success stories, you'll see actual documents from the courts with judges granting we just had a prosecutor withdraw in Vegas, and I posted a scanned or a picture of the certified order from the judge granting the prosecution's withdrawal. I have motions that were granted.
I've seen withdrawals before, but as far as when you're up there, as far as being a non-attorney, I've never really seen them. They always say, "Well, you need an attorney." I've seen them even when it's allegedly some sort of criminal procedure. I see them even arrest people so they'll get a public defender. But like I said, what I'll do is I'll look and see what you have. A lot of times, most of the time I say you got to take it up to the appellate court on the state level. It's very rare. Sometimes I sit down there and watch them, just basically, railroad people.
Yeah, that happens quite often. Yeah, but we've got a pretty good track record. Well, I think my record here, and the people that I work with, we've got a much better record than just a few percentage that get things tossed out. We got a pretty good percentage of that, and we've done it on in 4 continents. I mean, Eyal, who does No State Project Israel, has had success in Israel. And we've had success and we have and this is all documented on the website. We've even had things thrown out in Australia. So, yes, you can. It doesn't mean for a second that everything gets tossed out, that they always just say, "Oh my gosh, I have to withdraw this," and they agree, But in more cases than not, we get them tossed out. I don't post everything. I only post a win on the website when I have the documentary proof. We don't always get that.
I think a lot of times they may do that. A lot of times, they don't want other people to keep using the same process. They just want to get you out the court because they got other people that can, steal their money. That's basically all they're doing is, because it says, well, you violated a statute. You can only violate you can only violate another man or something, either financially, mentally, or physically, period. And it's when they say you violated the statute, it's the statute's like the state. It don't exist,
no, the statute does exist. It just doesn't. There's just no evidence that it actually applies to anybody. That you can demonstrate. We can show that there is no state. That they're just men and women calling themselves that. It's like Santa Claus. But the statutes in the Constitution, those actually have an objective reality. I mean, they are real. There's no evidence to show that they apply to anybody. So yes, they're a criminal organization. It sucks that we still have this stain on society, this parasitic group that still enjoys legitimacy. But we do the show and encourage people to challenge these tickets and give them the tools to effectively defend themselves so that other people can see what they are. And if more people saw you and me and others going into court and challenging them and getting things thrown out, or even just challenging them,
there's not enough people. There's just not enough people doing it. We need more people doing it.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing, I really appreciate what you're doing because the general population or an American population is really dumbed down. Because it's physically impossible to violate something that don't exist, a statute. You can't possibly violate a statute.
You can't violate a statute unless there's evidence that applies to you. Sure, of course.
Right, I'm saying, but the definition of violation is some sort of trespass. How can you physically trespass on a statute?
Well, a statute's a
tangible
rule, but a statute is just a rule written by some psychopaths. So if you can violate a rule that if it applies to you, I mean, obviously
it doesn't apply to you.
Right. Well, I'm just saying in general. In general, you can violate a rule that applies to you, but you can't violate a rule that doesn't. And you can't violate a rule that someone is just assuming or saying applies to you if they don't have any actual evidence that it does. But, I do the show, and we started doing the show on Wednesdays too, because there's more of a reach on YouTube than most social platforms. And I started even, putting the show on Facebook so that more people can. And then I encourage people to don't just wait for court, but even if you're not prepping for court, go in as an activist and ask some of these questions to to a city council or a county commission, so that other people can see and and learn what you're doing, and learn that these people are not who they say they are, that they are criminals, and we can do that effectively by just asking some questions. So just hold. Oh, we're going to the last segment. Just hold tight, Mr. Black. We'll be back with the last segment in just a moment. So here on the No State Project. So please don't go away. Welcome back. We're in the last segment of the big show today for November 18, 2017. I will be live on the Wednesday YouTube live stream. Another hour of Anarchy Radio this Wednesday on my YouTube channel. So make sure you're subbed so that you get you'll know when we go live. But it will be Wednesday at 4 Mountain Standard Time. And going to do what we can to get to everybody. We got a few more calls, so bring Mr. Black back. Well, Mr. Black, so just what. I understand the frustration. I see so-called libertarians and so-called anarchists with hundreds of thousands of subs. So, and I understand. I get downvoted into oblivion when I post on social networks, such as Reddit or even Steemit, and then the post goes nowhere. In fact, I still scratch my head that I can give documented proof of success in court, and even with almost 10,000 subs, almost nobody watches those videos. I'm almost to a point where I'm not even going to post success stories on YouTube anymore, because it's not even worth I'll post the documents on my website, but it's almost not worth going through the trouble to do a video for it, because nobody watches those videos. So,
well, you know what? I gotta find out where they're at, because I watch them myself. But what I was telling you, I've had some success. Basically, cases thrown out, because a lot of times these judges, who we believe are judges, these administrators, other times you have to use my own success. You have to use the appellate court's decision from that very state, because they don't want to get remanded back, and they don't want their decisions being overturned by a non-attorney. So sometimes it'll happen that way, or sometimes, you have to go to the appellate court and to get your remedy. And it's like, you shouldn't have to go 3 steps up in the state court for you to get your remedy. I mean, they know when they pull you over and stuff like that. They know they're violating their own rules that they agreed to follow.
They don't care.
They know they're doing it.
They don't give a damn. I don't agree. A small disagreeing with you. I don't think these judges in traffic court, at least in traffic court, I don't think they give a damn if you go up on appeal and their decision gets overturned. I don't think they care. I don't think they give you a second thought once you walk out the door. I think they have forgotten your name by the time they take that stupid robe off. They don't give a damn. And even if they did care, it doesn't cost them a dime. It's not going to cost them an election or a retention. Nothing. What will start to matter to them, because if it goes to we can do something that affects their budget, and that's why I recommend filing claims against their insurance to cover the damage that they've done to you. I encourage that big time, because
me too.
Me too, Ron. So that's somewhere.
Also, you should always be filing these complaints against these here attorneys, these prosecutors, or just the regular attorneys, because when we spoke about rules and codes and stuff, they have a code they have to go by. And again, if you file, they get too many complaints, it goes against their insurance. If they don't have their insurance, it can't work.
It's supposed to.
That's another remedy. I mean, I've had attorneys like drop cases as soon as I filed a complaint with the Bar Association.
Wow,
because they have something agreed, something. Yeah.
Usually that's not what happens, Mr. Black. Usually, you know, I had the goods on attorneys up in Washington. I mean, I had them dead to rights, lying through their teeth. Had it recorded, and the Bar Association did nothing. The Bar Association in California told me in writing, if they are not going to take a complaint against any prosecutor unless a judge has given a decision or an order that they engaged in misconduct. So, and good luck doing that when the judge is allowing the misconduct.
But he's a bar attorney also. But my thing is, when you file them, it goes against their insurance. It's like having too many accidents. They're not going to reprimand them. But the thing is, it goes against their insurance claims, insurance policies. So you just want to file it. The Bar Association physically is not going to do anything to them. But you just need to keep filing these complaints because they had a code of ethics that they agreed to, so it applies to them because they agreed to it. So I had on a couple occasions when as soon as I put those couple bar agreements in there, you know, they backed down.
Right,
you know,
very
they
nice.
sent a letter saying, hey, we're dismissing the claim, or we're making a business decision not to, you know, pursue a debt or whatever. So, but it's just a thing, like I said, what you're showing everything. It's just that people just have to quit being scared and try to, you know, take the country back, because these women are just basically criminals, and they don't have a right to your labor, because they say you know, if you owe $400 because you didn't have insurance and you only make $400 a week, you know, that's a week of your labor they're just stealing. So it's basically involuntary servitude.
Yeah.
You know,
well, hey, I appreciate the call. I encourage everyone. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Black in Pittsburgh. Appreciate hearing from you again. File against their insurance. I'm going to get to another call quickly here, but real fast, someone's asking, does anyone know how to file an insurance claim in California? They do have insurance, self-insurance, risk management in the city and counties. So, for example, if you look up the county of San Diego, there will be risk management. That's where you want to start to look for these things. And you can get a claim form usually from them, but you don't necessarily have to do that. But you can do that. Risk management and the county or city that is actually doing that to you. So that's where you can get that. So we've got, looks like a Skype call. You've been on, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark, this is Tom from Missouri again.
Tom from Missouri. Okay, well, it's good. Do you have a good news update for us?
No, I don't have an update for you, but I'm listening to your guy talking about your show and how you say people don't listen, but people are listening, even though you think they're not, because I am, and I've got just about all of yours taped. So I listen to it on a recorder every day, like I was going to church or something. So for you to say you're going to stop doing that stuff,
no,
I wouldn't do that.
No, you misunderstood.
You got a lot of people following you.
No, you're misunderstanding. It's just I don't get a lot of views on the videos already, but I get very, very few on the success stories. So I was saying, not that no one's, I mean, I have almost 10,000 subs, which is incredible for this subject matter. And to put out a success story and have it barely get 500 views, for some reason, the people who are subbed to my YouTube channel don't care about the success stories. I didn't say I wasn't going to stop doing it. I said I wasn't going to post videos of that. I would just post the documentation on my website, and because it may not be worth all the time that it takes to do that. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. And you have problems on your show. I heard one time you were saying somebody was calling in, and you're saying that it just ruined your show. No, it was kind of pretty neat actually, because I was listening to that one too, and we could hear you frustrated with what's going on and stuff. But it was kind of neat, and it was interesting to listen to that because you're new at it, and you don't have everything ironed out yet or anything. You don't have enough support and everything. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are listening to you and that are just hanging on, by a thread that can't really get in touch with you because, like my situation, I can't email you. I can't do anything except record your thing and listen to it every day, whether it's this one or one from 4 years back or 5 years back, and keep on listening and listening and listening until I get that drilled in to where when I walk into court, like the one guy said, that he just can spit it out, whatever they say, he's got something to back it up with. And it's hard to do that because those people are speaking in a different language in court. We don't understand any of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I enjoy doing the show, and it sucks that, there are some people, that I don't think produce anything of value and just a populist, and they're rich and they enjoy hundreds of thousands of subs, and they'll say whatever they need to say to get views, and every view they get another thing into their Patreon or whatever.
That's another thing too. I listened to the ones that I called in on, and how the people would say something down there at the bottom, and that's very interesting because, what the heck? So what? Let them say good things about you. Let them say bad things about you or me. Even they were saying stuff about me when I called in that I was like some kind of a agent or something, or I was just trying to infiltrate or something.
20 seconds,
and it's not true at all.
We got 20 seconds.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay, let me mute you up. Well, my name is Marc Stevens. We are at the end of another edition of the No State Project. This is for November 18th, 2017. I will be live this Wednesday on my YouTube channel. So that's at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So till then, salud.